Welcome. My name is Jodi Bronchtein, and I am going to be talking with one of my favorite people at one of my favorite wineries. We're in St. Helena. It's the most beautiful day on the planet. I'm not exaggerating. We're here with Beth Novak Milliken. We are on grounds. We are estate. We are at Spottswoode right now, and we are talking to you with Benchmark Wines, and we are going to be trying three beautiful wines today from Spottswoode. Um, I kind of want to talk a little bit, if I can, Beth, if you could say hi.
You go ahead and say whatever you want, Jodi. I'm just here with you.
Okay, so
Everybody, thank you for being here with us.
okay, so we're really excited to be here. This is my fourth visit in about 2 years, and um, every single time I get invited, I come here. I know the dog's name. I walk around the vineyards. I'm a big fan. So I came from the East Coast, and the reason why I am in Napa Valley is because I worked at Press Restaurant. But I have to tell you that Spottswoode has always been on my radar for a number of reasons. Spottswoode to me is farming, it's people, it's being good stewards of both property and wine and their image and their essence. But it also speaks to me very strongly about community, and all of the stars that you ever hear about in Napa had something to do with this place. So it's very special to me. It's not just a like, oh, here's another wine for Benchmark. Not at all. I screamed and yelled when I was asked to do this. I'm super excited. Beth, you know how I feel about this place, but I also have to think about someone that's maybe never had Spottswoode. They've heard the name, they know, okay, Spottswoode, Napa Valley, but they don't know the story of it. And you've probably told it 1.5 billion times, but if we can talk about if you can talk about it, I would really love that. So people know, like, I want to start at the origin story, and then we'll work on where we are now, which is a continuation of glorious stuff. Can you
Okay,
speak to that?
I certainly can, because I've been here for the whole ride. So we moved. My family moved here to Napa Valley in 1972. So my father was a doctor in North San Diego County, who at age 39 decided he wanted to raise his 5 children in a more rural environment. And although he and my mom were both Southern Californians, they had met at Stanford, and so had a connection to Northern California. Some friends of theirs from college had moved up here into what's present day Donna Estate, interestingly enough. And we came and visited one time over a Thanksgiving when it was raining really hard, and my parents fell in love with it and thought, this is a really neat place and we like it. So the next thing you know, they're looking for properties. And I would love to tell you that they knew anything whatsoever about grape growing or winemaking. They did not. They maybe drank Matus, maybe they had Lancers, Blue Nun. I mean, they more drank Coors beer and margaritas than wine. So let me just stay straight up. They were not fine wine drinkers, really, and they did not know anything about grape growing. What they needed was a house large enough for 5 children. My mom was an avid gardener, and my dad wanted to stop being a doctor and drive a tractor. And so my dad, I guess, was up here on a visit by himself and chanced upon this old estate that was called Spottswoode, and it fit all of those parameters. And it's right here on the west side of the town of St. Helena. So for those of you who have been to the Napa Valley, which I hope many of you have, the romantic description is you head north on Highway 29, you get to the second traffic light in town, which is Adams Street. You make a left and go 6 blocks, and you run right into this beautiful, it's a stone wall with a gate above that says Spottswoode, and we have 45 acres right up against the western hills. It turns out we're on the alluvial benchland of Napa Valley, the northernmost part of the western benchland. Again, it's not like my parents were looking for benchland soils. They had no idea. They just found this old property. The history of the property is interesting because it was established in 1882 by a German immigrant, mostly German and Italian immigrants, settled Napa Valley. And so George Schonewald established the Spottswoode, what is now known as the Spottswoode Estate. He called it Esmeralda. He was a hotel manager at the Hotel Del Monte down in Monterey. So he built Spottswoode as a summer residence. And although the Hotel Del Monte burned and is no longer exists, it was built around the same time as the Hotel del Coronado, which most people are familiar with. And so it had that sort of Victorian ethic. And so he built this beautiful Victorian home, planted vines, We don't know what he planted. We've tried to figure it out, but we've never been able to quite figure it out. But we assume European varietals, probably Riesling and some other things. At any rate, then he owned it. He and his wife owned it until 1906, when it was sold to a family who owned it for just 2 years. In 1908, it was sold again to another family who named it Lyndenhurst, hence the name of our Napa Valley Cabernet. And then in 1910, it was sold to a woman named Mrs. Spots, who named the estate Spottswoode in her late husband's memory. So she actually put this beautiful wrought iron sign above and in between these two stone pillars, and there was the name. But when we bought it in 1972, that gate had been actually built for horse and buggy. And of course, it was rather narrow for a family of 5 who had like a Ford LTD station wagon with the fake wood paneling. Some of you may remember those. A Ford van, that sort of thing. And so they had to widen the gate by 18 inches so that we could maneuver these cars in and out. And the whole town is just up in arms. And who are these newcomers? What are they doing to Spottswoode? Not only were we new, we were from Southern California. It's like we had a number of strikes against us. So my parents just widened the sign and put it right back up. So, and one important thing to note too is that Napa Valley and St. Helena were entirely undiscovered when we got here, right? So it's important to say that land prices reflected that. My parents paid about $4,000 an acre for Spottswoode. Today, land starts in this valley at $400,000 an acre and goes up from there. So that the point of sharing that is just that my parents, by pure serendipity, pure luck, right place, right time. They bought this property, and all of a sudden, here we were.
From $4,000 an acre to $400,000 being like the smallest amount. And you know what? Honestly, I feel like when you talk about serendipity, it kind of was. Can I try to finish the story a little, and then you tell me if I'm doing an okay job with it?
Go ahead.
Okay, back to me for a second on the East Coast. Would try wines from Napa, and I have a tell, like people have, in poker. My tell is if I smell a flight of wine and I move a wine forward, it's because I know I'm going to like it, or it has something interesting about it. And every single time I would taste Napa wines, I would push a wine forward and it would always be Spottswoode. It would always be Spottswoode.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, so that's on my radar. It's somewhere I have to go.
Yes.
So you moved here, planted vines, doing all the things. You said you had some strikes against you, and your father died very young as a doctor, leaving your mother Mary with 5 young children, a widow with 5 young children, and not a farmer, not a vintner, not a grape grower, not a vineyard manager, a mom who loved to garden. By the way, Schönwald in German, to my translation, means beautiful forest.
Exactly.
Oh, good. Das ist ganz genau.
Yeah. Schönwald is beautiful forest, beautiful wood. Exactly.
So that makes sense when she said, Spottswoode and beautiful wood, and your mother was a gardener. Like, serendipitous for sure, but also I think everything happens for a reason. So from my accounts, and also from I just want to pick this book up. I took it right off your shelf. I did, because it's literally like, this is like the Bible for me. Once upon a time, this Napa Valley Now and Then book. I want you to see how thick this is. This is by Kelly White, and Leslie Rudd made a printing, became a printer to print this huge book. This is a magnus opus. And one of my favorite stories in here is about Spottswoode. But what happened was, your father died, your mom had children, 5 of them. And by all recounting, neighbors, she sold grapes to all kinds of storied estates for a while. And then there were 2 in particular that were like, you know what? The grapes from this property they slap. They're amazing.
Right.
Maybe you should start producing wine. And your mom was like, cool. What? I don't know how to do that either. But and maybe I've made a storybook out of it in my own like Disney world, but that there was really kind of a community coming together to make sure that it worked. Like, this was valuable property and they wanted to help. They could have just kept their mouths shut and kept buying the fruit and made a
No,
single thing.
no, it was very much, it was a great community. I mean, we moved here, yeah, I mean, right away, other families that had moved here around that time, you know, the Chapelets, the Schaefers, the Davies of Schransburg, Cakebreads had moved up, not that much, you know, too much earlier, the Chapelets. I mean, you think of all these families that had kind of moved up here, you know, at the same time. And so there was this great sense of community. So yeah, I mean, when we moved here, it was an old post-prohibition vineyard. So it was planted to, you know, Green Hungarian and French Colombard as the delicious white varietals, and
Napa Gamay.
Napa Gamay and Petit Syrah as the reds. And so, you know, Dad he realized his dream of not being a doctor. He got out and replanted the vineyard. Thankfully, Rick Foreman was a neighbor who lived across the street. Got to know Justin Meyer after we moved here and others. So people helped, you know, sort of say, well, what should we plant? And so we planted primarily Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon and this 40 acres of vines that we had, and a little bit of Zinfandel, but that's really neither here nor there. And so we replanted the vines, and then lo and behold, my dad had to go back to work as a doctor because he was spending an inordinate amount and making zero because he wasn't practicing medicine. So he was an emergency room doctor for a few years here in St. Helena. And then, as you noted, when he was just 44 years old, 5 years after we moved here, he died very unexpectedly of a heart attack, leaving my mom a widow with this property. You know, he was the adventurous spirit that brought us here, I suppose, but she was the indomitable spirit that kept us here. You know, she had fallen in love with St. Helena, with Spottswoode. Before my dad's death, they had sold grapes to St. Clement. We had sold grapes to Frog's Leap. Robert Mondavi had even purchased some of the Napa Gamay. So I think she thought, you know, I have a livelihood here. This vineyard's been replanted. We've sold some fruit. I can keep doing this. So she went to like Joe Heights after my dad died. She was afraid to death of him because it was kind of a curmudgeon. He agreed to buy the fruit. You know, Mike Robbins at Spring Mountain agreed to buy the fruit and had a massive desk. And she was afraid, you know, she had never done this. And then both the Schaefer families and the Duckhorn families were really good family friends. And they had known that my parents, their shared dream had been to make wine from this estate. So they were buying our fruit and they really liked it. And they did feel like the Cabernet Sauvignon was something special. And so they encouraged her to do the wine and to make wine. And so she hired, we were just, again, there's so many fortunate things. Tony Soter was our founding winemaker. He had been up at Chapelet. He was looking to start his own brand, which he did, which was called Etude. Of course, he's up in Oregon now with his Soter Pinot, which is a phenomenal wine. But he was looking to do something different. He felt that our estate had great potential. He set the tone for Spottswoode and took it on and started making our wines. And then he took over the farming of the vineyard in 1985 because he really realized, if I'm making these wines, I need to have this intimate connection with this land. I need to know these grapes like on a personal level. So he took that over. He brought organics to Spottswoode in 1985, and from that, I mean, he set that environmental tone, and we've never looked back. So yeah, so we started making wine 10 years after we moved here. Our first vintage of Spottswoode Estate Cabernet was 1982, and that was 10 years after we moved here and 5 years after my dad's death.
So that was the first vintage. Also, you said Tony Soter was the initial winemaker. Is it true that he brought just like a young fledgling David Abreu on as well? And probably that's...
So when he took over the farming, that is a funny story, good one. When he took over the farming in 1985, David Abreu was a relative unknown. He lived right across the street on Madrona Avenue, and he had all the farming equipment. He was a farmer. And so Tony said, hey, we'd love to have you come and do our farming and bring in the equipment and all that kind of stuff. We hired our own team here to do the crew in the vineyard, but David came in and brought the equipment and brought a lot of just knowledge of the farming he had done all over this valley prior to that time. And so for him, I think for David, it was certainly his first vineyard that was organic. I mean, that was certainly not something that David was going around doing. So Tony and David worked closely together and had a very nice relationship. And David was associated with our vineyard for quite some time.
Okay. So this literally, whether you're in wine or this is your first time hearing about Spottswoode and you're just sort of finding out the history, it goes even further than this, but it kind of reads like a fairy tale of everybody that I've ever loved and all the wines that we ever sold at press that were older, all of the Etude, all of the like Madrona, the Madrona
Yeah,
Vineyard.
Madrona Ranch, yeah.
It's next door. It's
Correct.
down
Correct.
the street. It's literally unbelievable. But I want to talk about the wines that we have here today, and I want to start with the 2019 Spottswoode Sauvignon Blanc, and kind of a parallel between your mother and
Yes.
David Abreu. True or
Yes.
false? Mary in photo shoots would take pictures with Cabernet and then only really wanted to drink Sauvignon Blanc.
There is truth to that statement. She loved Sauvignon Blanc. It was her favorite. And not just the wine, but also the grape. I mean, the grapes they have such a great flavor as they're when they get ripe and you're getting ready to pick them. And it's just one of those grapes that the vines are really pretty and the grapes just taste so good. Of course, she preferred the wine because she did like the, what sugar converts to.
Right. 100%.
100%. Why else would we enjoy it so much? But she did love Sauvignon Blanc. It was her favorite wine, and she probably had the biggest allocation of anybody each year.
Well, good, as she should. And I also I want to speak to Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc is we make it the mother of Cabernet. Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Franc, when literally, if you look at the grape, Cabernet should be I don't know. I just feel like with Sauvignon Blanc tends to be, you always think of it as the mother of Cabernet. It's either the mother or the father. It is a parent, right?
Yes.
But I will say this, Sauvignon Blanc was like, okay, Sauvignon Blanc, as a Somm, you try it all the time and super refreshing. There is not a Sauvignon Blanc in the world I love more than Spottswoode Sauvignon Blanc. And it turns out I'm in really good company. Karen McNeil considers one of these a super Sauvignon. Mm-hmm. And Karen McNeil coined that term. She says it's one of the world's highest expressions of the grape. And I completely agree. This wine is, let me show you the picture of it. All right. This is the Spottswoode 2019 Sauvignon Blanc. And I don't know if you can see this. We have shades in here and the sun is so bright and gorgeous right now that I hope on the East Coast, it's not too bad because I'm like, I'm a little hot. I might have sunburn. It's so gorgeous in Napa, but this estate especially is just absolutely gorgeous. So this color in the glass is almost like a yellow green. I don't know if you can necessarily see that. There's plenty of
That's a slightly tinted glass to protect the wine.
Well, yeah, sure. That's true too. And then let's do this one. Okay. So it's like bright and yellow and gorgeous and beautiful. And there's a picture of the property here. So it's Napa and a little bit of Sonoma as well, correct? And then the source of the grapes is absolutely, it reads like a fairy tale. We've got some Stagecoach from Atlas Peak. We've got some Tofanelli from Calistoga. We've got Atlas Peak, which I feel like is one of the most overlooked AVAs ever. Yeah. I love Atlas Peak fruit. St. Helena, obviously, so with State across the street, a little bit of Sonoma Mountain, and then Stagecoach, I said that already. It's just two Atlas Peaks, right? So there's also a couple of things going on here. 98% Sauvignon Blanc, but we've got these clonal selections, and this is where it gets super sexy for me as a Somm. You read about grapes all the time, but then when you see something like I think that the thing for me, this Musqué, can you talk about that even a little bit? So there's a clone. It's a clone of Sauvignon Blanc, and it's and so it mutates, and this is a clone. And I want to also talk about the Spottswoode clone of Cabernet once we get to it in the third wine. Right. But can you talk about what it adds to this wine? Like what the flavor, the scent profile really is what I'm let me not be coy. Can you speak to like why that's important?
Well, for us, so just historically, when we planted the vineyard, we did have some Sauvignon Blanc in the vineyard, and we started making the Cabernet in 1982. Then in 1984, Tony decided he wanted to kind of give the Sauvignon Blanc a try. We started making the Sauvignon Blanc in 1984. Then fast forward, we made it 84 through 1990 from our estate, but Tony had come to both my mom and me. I was working here by then and had said, look, phylloxera is out there. We're going to get it. We're on AXR1 rootstock. Let's have a plan. And our plan was when we find the phylloxera, which again, we knew we would, we'd sacrifice the Sauvignon Blanc acreage for Cabernet Sauvignon. So after the 1990 harvest, we ripped out the 9 acres that had been devoted to Sauvignon Blanc, and we planted back 9 separate blocks of Cabernet Sauvignon. So now we don't have Sauvignon Blanc in our vineyard. You can imagine what my mom was doing at this point in time. So she was not. So we decided we're going to buy fruit. So we bought first in all Napa Valley. So the Frediani vineyard up in Calistoga. I talked about the Italian and German earlier, but it was the Fredianis, the Toffanellis, who we're still getting a bit of Semillon from, and they've always had this interesting block of Semillon on the corner of Dunawheel and the Silverado Trail. And then we bought from Larry Hyde down in the Carneros, from whom we still purchase, which is quite remarkable. And then over time, those grape sourcing, that has changed some. We are over on Sonoma Mountain with the Farina and the Murray vineyards. So what we're doing is we're looking for the very best Sauvignon Blanc grown in great soils, that will crop at about 4 to 5 tons of the acre max. We don't want, so we're looking, so, you know, on Sonoma Mountain or on some of these other soils, that's what you get, because we want that flavor profile of more intensity. And then what we do is, and, you know, Musqué, you asked about that specifically. It's just one of the clones. And, you know, Aaron Weinkauf, I want to give, by the way, I am not the winemaker. I am the president and CEO. So I run the business. Aaron Weinkauf is our winemaker and vineyard manager, and he is responsible for these wines. And what's really unique about Spottswoode are those different clones that we use. Musqué is just one of them. And in fact, you know, Aaron would sit here and argue that Musqué doesn't have sort of that super floral kind of spicy, that it's not that different from other clones of Sauvignon Blanc. Be that as it may, it is a really great clone, which is why we like it. We love the Liparita clone. We love the Musqué clone. We love clone 6. You know, these other clones that we have in here, we like them. We like all of them, and coming together, they're great. But what we do is we bring in the Sauvignon Blanc, there's more nuance in this, but in the main, we whole cluster press it, separate juice from the skins and the seeds, let it settle overnight in a large stainless tank. And then it is all moved into small vessels for fermentation. So literally we are in about 40 to 50% small stainless steel barrels. We are in about 40% oak barrels, French oak barrels, some new, some used. And then also we have 2 cement eggs, 1 ceramic egg from Australia, and 1 amphora, 1 clay amphora. So the idea is it's literally over 200 separate fermentations that are done each year. So the care that goes into making this wine is absolutely remarkable. They're fermenting these different vessels. We can lees stir. We're looking for texture. We're looking for, you know, beauty. We're looking for complexity. These wines, I mean, I had a birthday yesterday, and I opened a 2010 Spottswoode Sauvignon Blanc in Magnum. It was stunning, still fresh, beautiful on the palate, still had like a great sense of kind of like key lime and some beautiful guava and that sort of thing. It was still so fresh and so stunning. So these wines are, while they're, we always think of Sauvignon Blanc, oh, we should drink it right away. If you tuck it away, the acidity and the balance and the freshness will carry it and make it beautiful longer term too. Like this 19 was released last year, and it's just keeps coming on and getting better. I really love our Sauvignon Blanc, but again, I'm not patting myself on the back. This is our awesome winemaking team that's led by Aaron.
Okay, so then that makes sense. Like when you talk about, like, when just using Karen McNeil's term, super Sauvignon, I guess that's the thing. And honestly, I don't think I knew that there were 200 separate fermentations that go on. And it's just like anything else. It's like you can have a loaf of bread, or you can have a loaf of bread.
Exactly.
You can have somebody, like, you can buy something from the store, or you can literally go anywhere in Germany or Austria and like take a bite of something and like start crying. Like you've never had the thing like this before. But 200 separate fermentations for a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc is, I mean, it's unheard of. Exactly. But that's, I think, the important thing. And maybe that's why yours is so special. I mean, how could it not be? Look at the care that's taken into that. Aaron is dynamite. And but I will say this, and Aaron will win because he is the winemaker and the vineyard manager. But I'd be willing to fight him a little bit on the fact that the Musqué clone doesn't do anything separate because of this reason. I feel that when you put care into something, and when you use something that's different from everybody else, not everybody's using this clone, and there's a reason, right? So, I just feel like you could look at some New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, some are better than other. So many California Sauvignon Blancs tend to be this like super, super rich, heavy, and they don't have that acidity to match. Now, you've got a little bit of Semillon in here, and Tofanelli, we used to sell just the regular Semillon is unbelievable as well. So
Yeah.
it's like those older vines, it's people caring about it, it's that separate clone. But you talked a little bit about Benjlins and why that's important, and how your parents sort of they came across that. And for people that don't know what a Benchland is, it's really important. I did a seminar on Rutherford the other day, and what Benchlands are is literally, you've got this whole area that's coming down from the mountains, and usually it was a waterway at some point in time. And what happens is when everything receded, there's a waterway, and the mountains are trying to get to a body of water. So a benchland is one of the definitions. It's literally dragging all the gravel. It's dragging all of these rocks over and over. And Cabernet loves gravel, which is why left bank in Bordeaux is full of gravel. Right bank is more Merlot, because Merlot likes clay soils more. And this is, I'm trying to make it sort of like a layman's thing, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you've got benchlands, you've got people that care about things, you've got a storied history. But also, what I will say, the most important thing to me when I think about Spottswoode is this. When I push those glasses forward every time I tasted Spottswoode, I was sensing something. And a lot of people don't want to believe in romance. They only want to believe in the science of the thing. So I'll give them that. I will say that for both romance and science, for some reason, me personally, if the fruit has been cared for, if it is organic, if it is biodynamic,
Exactly.
immediately, I feel like you can smell and taste that in a wine, and I'm not ever wrong. Is it because I'm special? No, it's because it does something. That farming, that care of the vine does something to the wine. Otherwise, why do it? Sure, to be
life force. Yeah, there's a life force of sorts that you can, again, a vibrancy, a freshness, and a sense of something alive and living and breathing. And I think that's what it gives you to some. I mean, if that's where you're going. And also benchland, just to break, you were trying to make it simple. Yeah, I mean, what it is, you described it perfectly, Jodi. But it's just it's the alluvium. It's the alluvial soils right up against the hills. And so those alluvial soils are really well drained. They're full of rock. They're full of gravel. They're full of all of that came down from the mountains over millennia. And it turns out it's great soil. I saw quickly a question come through, and I'll answer it. There is no ML on this. So no malolactic. We do leaf stir. Each vintage is different, just depending on what we're trying to do in terms of texture and mouthfeel. There was no malolactic on this wine. So we want to retain that freshness.
And also, when you're talking about 200 separate fermentations and then all the different vessels, you could have just done it in stainless steel. That would have retained acidity. Or you could have done it in oak, and that would have given you some richness. Or you could have done malolactic and made it a true like Bordeaux Blanc. Or you could have just done amphora or concrete, and you did all of them. And so what does that mean for just the layman? Like if you don't know anything about wine, and so if you don't know anything about wine at all, you don't have to do any of that. You do it because it's adding something. It's the difference between opening a can of soup and making soup over 3 days. And I'm not trying to romanticize it, but I'm like water for chocolate. I'm that kind of person. I feel like I feel like if something is made with love, if something is loved, case in point, yesterday, I was bottling a wine. I work for Master of the Wines is one of the jobs that I'm doing right now, because I'm trying to like expand my sommelier experience. And so now I'm doing a little bit with production. And we tried, it was Drew Viognier from Mendocino Ridge.
Wow.
Viognier is a much maligned grape. It just is, especially in California. It's peach juice, peach nectar. It's kind of cloying. You really just want more acidity. And we had to open 6 cases of it. And my job is to taste every bottle and make sure that it's perfect. So that way it shows the wine best when it's getting rebottled for kits. This thing, I literally smelled it and I tasted it and went, oh, these are the most loved vines. I was like, this is organic, if not biodynamic. And one of the kids that was there was like, he doesn't know a lot about wine. He's brand new, but he's super good at it. And he goes, how do you know that? I was like, I don't. I promise you though it is. I just can feel it. And the winemaker came in and I was like, hey, hi, my name is Jodi. So what's your viticultural practices? Because, you know, I'm not anything if not honest. Or you could talk to anybody. And he's like, so it's organic. I was like, I know, you can tell. This is loved. Viognier is maligned, but when you love something, it gets beautiful. So if you don't have the Sauvignon Blanc in front of you, and probably people don't, I will say this, by far, with no hesitation and no reservations, Spottswoode Sauvignon Blanc is literally, oh God, this is gonna be in so much trouble. It is my favorite Sauvignon Blanc in the United States of America. Sorry, everybody.
Wow, Jodi.
Don't care. That's how it's always been. I'm not quiet. And then there's also, this is the 2019 Sauvignon Blanc. It is the type of wine that you want to smell as much as you want to drink.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I know. It just keeps bringing you back, you know? It really does bring you back. And I know Karen McNeil always says, she always gets something out of Spottswoode, like a sense of botanicals, which I find really fascinating. But she's always talked about that.
Her birthday's this weekend also. You have a yeah.
I did not know that we were fellow Aries.
You sure are. And I'm getting her a cake from an Austrian bakery in Sacramento. She doesn't know it yet. But honestly, now that I know that she likes this, I might want to hit her with some Mary's Block. She is one of my favorite people ever. So this is, you don't have this in front of you. Let me tell you what's going on with it.
Uh-oh. You were doing so well, but you've frozen. Okay, let's hope Jodi comes back here. How odd is that? Well, I'll fill in for a moment and try to help you with what you might be finding here, but Jodi would describe it with much more enthusiasm, possibly than I can. No, I'm just kidding. I share the same enthusiasm. All right, I'll keep going, David. Thank you. So basically what I find often in this wine, and I find it in this, I mean, you get that a little bit of richness, you get that key lime and kind of a lemon curd is, I often get that. And then white, kind of white peach, like that pit fruit sort of sense of that just ripe white peach, which is something that we're always seeking. Something that, and then, oh, there she is. Jodi, you're back.
Hi, I don't know what happened, you guys.
I don't either. You froze, but I picked it up for you, and I was encouraged by David Parker, who's listening in. So I gave the sort of lemon curd, key lime. I talked about white peach. I talked about, you know, so we lost you not long after talking about Karen McNeil.
Okay, got it.
So if you pick up right from there, you're just right where you were.
Okay, sorry everybody, and we're gonna get involved with these cabs because you've never heard anybody talk about Sauvignon Blanc this long. I know you haven't, but it's worth it. Okay, this is, I get what she means about botanicals, because what this is doing on the nose, like, you know, the typical Sauvignon Blanc descriptors, right? You're like, okay, gooseberry and this and that, but this is like those things times 7. You've got, like, if you took the most beautifully ripe pink grapefruit and you ran your thumb along the skin so that you could smell the grapefruit oil, it's pink grapefruit oil. And I lived in Fiji. This is guava, like,
yeah.
You want to know what guava smells like. This has got a core of acidity. I don't drink wine a lot when I'm doing this. I've tasted this Sauvignon Blanc twice since we started this. I can still taste it on my palate. So the length on this thing is so long. And that's honestly, that's my descriptor for a quality wine, is I don't want to keep drinking a wine. I want to be able to, like, be contemplative with it, but I want everything to eat with this. I want scallops in lemongrass broth. I want poached fish with, like, cultured butter and lime zest. Like, I want this with Thai food. I want this on the porch. I want this when I'm in a great mood. I want this when I'm sad to cheer me up. It is literally, it's gorgeous. And honestly, you will never hear me talk about Sauvignon Blanc like this ever again. So, okay.
We got it on film though, so this is great.
That's right. That's it.
By the way, everybody out there should know. I mean, Jodi, when she was working at press, she was awesome. I just go and I'm like, Jodi, what do you have? You know, what do you have? And she's like, oh. Then you just see it, like, kind of turning, and all of a sudden, bang, this great bottle would come out. You're like, this is awesome. Like, I don't have to make a choice. You sort of look at the list and you're like, no, you just hand it right back over and say, what would you bring me? Here's what we're ordering.
Well,
thank you for that.
Well, such a long legacy of good people there. So any herbal grass profile, sure. There is lemongrass here.
Yeah,
I think what you mean in terms of like herbal grassiness. Okay, so actually, I walked the property today, and something that if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen a picture of it, or you will later. But they decorate this tree that's at the corner of a vineyard, and this is the third year in a row I've gotten to see it. And it is a tree that's decorated with all Easter things on it. And they had people out there like weed whacking and mowing. And I got to walk by the street with my mask off, and like the best like grassy dandelion, like nettles, all of that smell I feel like is in this wine, but not in a way that's like Sauvignon Blanc grassy. It's like Sauvignon Blanc arugula.
correct.
There's like a spice pepper, like, ooh, these are bitter herbs that are super good for my liver and are gonna like zhuzh up this salad. That's what it smells like. So to answer Mark Paul, that's what I think it is here. Okay, guys, we have Cabernet, and Cabernet is king in Napa, but I also just wanted to give a shout out. A lot of people think that white wines from Napa cannot be crisp, they cannot be elegant, they're not good with food pairings, that they're like these big, blowsy Chardonnays full of malolactic and cultured butter that literally are so rich that they kind of substitute for a first course, because God forbid you should try to eat them with anything besides like fettuccine Alfredo. Incorrect. So, and those have to place. Those are money makers. All right, so this is wonderful.
Okay.
I want to talk about environment with you, and I want to talk about biodynamics, and I want to talk about I heard that you guys were B Corp certified this year.
We were. We got our B Corp certification in July of 2020. We're really, really proud of that. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you know, when Tony brought organic farming to the property in 1985, that just set a tone for us. And I have to say that, you know, that was sort of what we did for a long time. You know, that was sort of just what we did. And all of a sudden, 2000, I took on the restoration of Spring Creek, which is a creek that borders the southern. It's a blue line creek, which just means it only runs when it rains, which we have not had much rain, but we're hopeful. At any rate, you know, the restoration of this creek, because it's a vineyard on our side and then residential sort of homes on the other side, and bringing it back on so that this little creek didn't just turn into sort of a ditch for people, and building back weirs and different things. We plant insectaries in the vineyard. We have bird boxes for bluebirds. We have owl boxes that are always, we get them occupied for barn owls, which is really great. We have solar, which we installed starting in 2007, and that's both at the vineyard and up here at the winery. And we generate 95% of our energy from solar, and what we don't, we buy from Marin Deep Green. So we're using only renewables for energy. We joined 1% for the Planet in 2007. Since 2007, we've been donating a minimum of 1% of our revenues to environmental organizations every year. That was founded by Yvon Chouinard of Patagonia, who truly is one of my heroes. I just look at him and think everything that he does is about using business for good. And so what we've been doing this for a long time. And Jodi mentioned it at the beginning, you know, we care for our community. We're very engaged in our community in terms of work that we do, in terms of donations that we make. We care for to me, my coworkers, everybody that works here with me, it's my family. We take care of everybody. We just, you know, we have full health. We have all sorts of things because they're family, and that's important to us. And to Lindy is my oldest sister who works here with me. And for both of us, these things are extraordinarily important. So we deeply care about our land, about our people, about our community, and about the planet. And so we've just continued to take that forward. We getting B Corp certified is a really big deal. It's a rigorous process, and something that you can't imagine the number of questions. There's like 0.2 points for this one, and 0.18 points for that one, and 0.6 for that. But we got it because that's how we've been operating. We're right now gold members of International Wineries for Climate Action. It was started by Familia Torres and Jackson Family Wines. And we want to do that, bring down our GHG emissions. You know, what's really important for everybody to know too is that although this is how we believe, I would call myself a pretty core environmentalist and believing that we have an obligation to take care of Mother Nature, but we're an agriculturally based business. So although we're sitting here enjoying wine out of a glass that came out of a bottle, it's not like I handed you a cluster of grapes and said, here, we live and die by what Mother Nature gives us every single year. And for us as an agriculturally based business, I'm second, Lindy and I are second generation. Our ambition, my ambition is to take this to the next generation and make this a multi-generational family business. And
Good.
to be in agriculture, you need a relatively stable climate to be able to plan forward, right? Because it's not like we're making widgets or steel rods. I mean, we're growing wine grapes and making wine. So for us, we not only want to do the right thing, but now what we really want to do is we want to really talk about it and really amplify it, because we want everybody who's a wine lover to understand that for you to keep loving the wines that you've come to love, we all have to start caring about our natural environment for us to all continue on. And so for us, all of these things that we're doing, it just feels so great to be a business that is, we're here to optimize profitability, not maximize. This is our family asset. We do need to be profitable, but we want to use our profitability for good and not to just take care of shareholders or anything. I mean, it's only family. We're 100% family owned, but that's what we're all about. And so hopefully that shows through in the wines too. But just, yeah, the environmental piece of this is so crucial because we are living with climate change. We are in agriculture and feel it. And it's not just the last 4 years have really brought it home with high winds, dryness, fires, everything else that we've contended with. But we've known for 15 years that we are looking at a warmer, drier future, and our irrigation regimen has adapted for that. We've bought equipment that allows us to process fruit more quickly and more efficiently, using less water for cleaning. We're, steam cleaners for our barrels, everything. I just saw a question come up about the 2020 vintage, and actually we're going to be tasting the 17 vintage that was also extreme in its very own way. So you'll have a chance to see what a great estate can do in a really challenging vintage. If you're tasting the 17, the 2020, you will taste Spottswoode wines from 2020 vintage. We just bottled our 2020 Sauvignon Blanc today. I don't know if you got to taste anything off the line, Jodi, did you?
I didn't. And I know that we have to talk about these cabs because we've got,
Okay, let's get to that.
We talked about this. It's my fault. I'm supposed to be like reining it in. Okay. So, but listen, Doug, we're going to talk about the 2020 vintage and we're also going to talk about 2017. But first, before we talk about that, and I promise you, I'm not like blowing you off on this, but I feel like it's going to be more important to talk about it with 17, if that's okay. Right. But real fast, in terms of climate change, I run a tasting group for the Napa tasting group for people that are studying for higher certifications or whatever. And we've tried to put Sancerre in blind flights of 6 for 6 times now since November. And no one has called Sancerre. No one has called Sauvignon Blanc from France. And these are people that are sitting for their master's exams. Is it because they don't know what they're doing, or is it because it's just getting warmer? 19 was warm. Like no one's even calling it. No one's even saying maybe Sauvignon Blanc. They're calling it Chenin. They're calling it big and round and waxy and good weight on the, but not Sancerre. And it's not just, I'm not picking on Sancerre. I love it, but it's happening with a lot of things. Gruner from Austria it's huge. You don't even know. Instead of it being like, oh, it's got this vegetal property, in order to have a typicity with grapes, you do have to have some sort of a,
It's climate related. I mean, it's soil, but so that's the terroir. It's the location, it's the site.
Precisely.
It's all the time,
right.
and it's the weather, and this year we're on 12 inches of rain maximum so far. Our normal is 36, and we're clearly not going to get there. And Jodi's talking about what a beautiful day it is. It is, but it's sunny and warm, a little bit breezy, and the winds are drying. So it's what we're dealing with, and we're doing our best to be both proactive while at the same time, of course, we have to be reactive. But we better get to the reds. We're already. I
know people are going to be like screaming, like, "Thanks for talking about the white wine for 47 minutes."
Exactly.
This is we've got 2017. Two wines. So we have Lyndenhurst 2017 Lyndenhurst Cabernet Sauvignon. All right, and what is Lyndenhurst? So I will say Lyndenhurst is what they named the house that they lived in 1910. Is that right? Did I remember that?
1908 to 1910. Yep.
Okay, so it was called Lyndenhurst, but the big gate says Spottswoode, and that will be on my Instagram after this. I took some gorgeous pictures of it. Jojo Samface. So tell us what Lyndenhurst is. This is a true Bordeaux blend. What is a Bordeaux blend? Well, it's the 5 things that you would see in Bordeaux. We've got 84% Cabernet Sauvignon, 10% Merlot. We have 3% Cabernet Franc, 2% Malbec, and 1% Petit Verdot. All those things are related except for Petit Verdot. That's like a cousin, but the rest are related. Okay, so what is Lyndenhurst compared to Spottswoode? Can you tell us what this
I can. So what Lyndenhurst is our Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. It's our expression of Napa Valley, and generally it's anywhere from 40 to 60% declassified lots from the Spottswoode estate. You know, we bring in our grapes every year. It is the Spottswoode vineyard. We anticipate that everything that we bring in will be Spottswoode and has the potential to be Spottswoode. As we go through and start blending, there are those lots of wine that are clearly Spottswoode, and there are some that are a little bit more fruit forward, a little bit more expressive early, don't have that, they have that beauty, but not the depth and complexity that we're seeking in Spottswoode. And so what we do with this is that we take those wonderful declassified lots, like with our Sauvignon Blanc, we have long-term relationships with a handful of family growers. I mean, we have Darms Lane between Yountville and Napa, we have Young Inglewood, we have Ed Cora up on Atlas Peak. I know you spoke to Atlas Peak. So we have these people who are long-term family farmers that we work with, and we buy grapes from them every year. And Aaron works closely with them. So what we do, we only make, well, on the Sauvignon Blanc, I should say, it's like 3,800 case production. It's very, very small. The Lyndenhurst, this one's about 2,000 cases. Our Spottswoode Cab, our ambition every year is to make 4,000 cases of our estate Cabernet every year. We hit it sometimes and we don't. We did not with the 17. But that's what our Lyndenhurst is. It's so what it is. It's more fruit forward, more approachable, with the same sensibility around Spottswoode, which is about beauty, elegance, structure. And I think when you taste all of these wines, but I think Aaron described it best. If you think about Spottswoode and our wines, all of these wines, they have immense power and they have immense beauty, but the power is that of like a yogi master, right? A core internal power, not an Arnold Schwarzenegger bodybuilder. Okay, so it's not the bodybuilder; it's more the core power of a yogi. And I think that is something that really holds us apart. It has that depth, it has that core, and it expresses itself in a really balanced way. We're picking fruit when it's ripe, not overripe. We don't want an underripe ideally either. To speak just quickly to the heat. So the Lyndenhurst, again, it's and relative to the Spottswoode Estate Cabernet, it's $85 a bottle. Suggested retail, the Spottswoode Estate Cabernet is $225. So Lyndenhurst is that wine that you can enjoy along the way, right? I mean, and again, made with our same winemaking team, our same ethic, the care, and it's a very intentional blend. It's not like everything that doesn't make Spottswoode goes into Lyndenhurst. It's only a piece of it. The vineyards from whom we purchase, it's not like everything that we purchase goes into Lyndenhurst. We always end up selling some wine bulk, right? So we have a very intentional approach with this wine to make just a beautiful expression of Napa Valley.
But I have to tell you, like, in case they're hearing like, oh, Lyndenhurst is the second label. In case someone's thinking like, okay, and you did speak to it, like, okay, it's all the stuff that nobody else wanted. That's not the case. Young Inglewood is one of my favorite producers in Napa, for sure. Their Von Claire is unbelievable. Know the winemaker, know the location. I sit over there. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is, you say fruit forward, and it really is. There's like a beautiful like boysenberry, but more than that,
yes.
Is structure, but there's this like wild, like sauvage, herby.
Agreed. That's what I was just gonna say. That floral kind of like almost like not lavender flowers, but like rosemary flowers, or like it's that, yeah.
It's rosemary flowers. It's also like if you were walking through an herb garden that was outside of a redwood forest. That's what it smells like.
I'm gonna say, because you get a little bit of that that sense of the earth. Yes, which I love.
You do, and it's this very like the closest it's like if it's kind of like, to me, like, I mean, it's obviously California, and I might get in trouble by the vintners for saying this, but like, this is what, because Linda's going to call me. We've got this, like, it's distinctly California, but like with the backbone of like, it's like California Garrigue. It's got all the things that you would want if the Rhone Valley were here for a minute. Like, you're crunching through stuff in your boots, but it's in the morning, so there's a tiny bit of dew still. There's still some fog. Now, a lot of people, we're in St. Helena, 5 miles between the Mayacamas and the Vaca. It's the waste of Napa, right? So the heat gets trapped here, but you're also right. They're right against the Mayacamas, like you're almost right against it. And I will say this, and I probably shouldn't, but anybody that's logged on to Benchmark, you get to hear the good stuff. The views of the sunset, I'm sorry, I have to do it. And your neighbor told me not to. He was buying wine. He was a longtime guest of press. You know, Aaron always came in and he said, do not say this on Benchmark. So I'm going to say it because I want to. The sunset over the vineyard here, like around Pine Street, is
stunning.
It's honestly, unless you're like, it's absolutely the most gorgeous. And people just walk by here, and we shouldn't say anything because St. Helena has way too much traffic as it is. But my God, it is the most gorgeous. But that's what it smells like. It smells like this in the morning. Yeah. And this has structure now. You can drink this now, but my God, this could also go for 15 years. And I do want to speak really quickly. I worked at Press, largest Napa Valley wine list, only Napa Valley wine list, unless you know somebody and you can get
unless you knew somebody who could bring you. You know, I mean, I didn't know anybody like that, but if I heard that if you knew somebody, you might be able to get something interesting from around the world.
Listen, the rule was is that they had stuff on the menu that was non-Napa, but it was only supposed to be for Napa regulars that asked for it. Because if your business is in Napa and you're working all day making Napa wine, if you want champagne, you should be able to have it. But it was really only supposed to be for locals, quite honestly. But the older Spottswoodes, which you cannot find, my God, I search and search. Older Spottswoode wines are so full of depth and personality and like light and darkness and the juxtaposition of the same thing with the herbs and the bramble, but the structure. There is personality in old Spottswoode wines, like literally. And I would fight the other two somms about this all the time, Carrie and Taylor, who didn't love it. I'd be like, but what about Spottswoode? And they were like, I don't know what that's going to be like. Like, those wines are really like, they're really about like the vintage. Well, like they're supposed to be.
Right. Exactly.
And some other wineries have a house style that no matter what, they want it to sort of remain this core. And I feel like Spottswoode doesn't no matter what. It's still always going to be the wine that I push forward in the group of 6 or 12 or 15. Just like when you smell an 11 Napa, you're like, that's the 11 because there's a pyrazine here and I enjoy it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But, and, you know, and what's interesting, so to go to 17, you know, the heat, there was extreme heat in 17. And here's what's fascinating. Normally, when you get extreme heat, you would expect the wines to be high alcohol, right? You would expect that high heat to create high sugar and to create that high sugar quickly. And so that you have this high sugar and you don't have the other things follow.
But the wine shuts down, right?
I mean, these are both below 14. I think the 17 Spottswoode Cab is 13.7.
Hold on.
Check it out. What does the Lyndenhurst say?
13.7. I have the bottle right here.
There we go.
And so then,
is the Lyndenhurst?
Lyndenhurst is 14.1.
Okay.
It is 13.7.
Okay, so there you go, which are still both low, you know, relative to Napa Valley. And so
for Napa? Yeah.
And so you would have thought that heat that happened over Labor Day weekend, we had a day that hit 117. That's 117. We are 45 miles as the crow flies. Help me out, Jodi. You know, from the Pacific Ocean. That shouldn't happen. It did, and that was just the hot day, the hottest day in sort of 10 days that hit above 105. It was remarkable. What happened is the vines they go into protection mode. I mean, any tree, any plant does that. It turns its back to the leaves turn their back to the sun. It went in protection mode. They shut down for a period of time. After the heat, and we knew that it was coming, Aaron put on judicious use of water, made sure that they had something there so that when that heat ended, they'd have something to draw from. So we left the grapes hanging, and here's what was remarkable. Sugars stalled out. They never went up. But the other parts of the wine, the other parts of the grapes, those did still continue to mature. So by the time Aaron started to bring in this fruit, we had amazing sort of the physiological ripeness. It was there. The sugars did not go up. So it's pretty amazing. You had to be really patient. I remember Aaron saying, like people were freaking out. It was hot, right? And we had these different things happen. And he was like, he just had to turn off his phone and listen to the wines. Because, you're getting all these people calling, what are you doing? Oh my God, what's going on? What's going on? So he just did that and listened to the wines. And I think, again, because of his skill, and I'm giving this all to him, our wines are exemplars of this vintage, and our 17 cab has been recognized as that, as one of the wines of the vintage, and it's something to be really proud of because, as an estate and as Spottswoode, you better make a great wine and a great vintage, or else you better not be here, right? You better put it in the bottle and in those great growing years. But if you can put it in the bottle, and I mean really put it in the bottle in the more challenging years, that speaks volumes, right? That's something that we almost take. I don't want to say we take more pride in it, but we take great pride in being able to deliver in the most challenging vintages. And so our 17 cab is something we're really proud of. Our 20 cab, what we did because of the fires and everything, we had picked, just like in 17, we had finished picking literally the day before the fire started by pure luck. We sent in everything to be tested in Australia and also in British Columbia. We tested everything to make sure that we could tell ourselves there is no smoke in here. There is no smoke taint in these wines. Our 20 Sauvignon Blanc is clean and beautiful, and we have measurements to show that. And then same thing with the cab. We spent a lot of money on lab analysis because we really literally wanted to be able to send in everything because we're learning too. And it's really exciting to be able to make wines in these vintages. And these are the vintages that we always want people to taste our wines, but we really want people to taste these vintages. It's like, don't take what you've read, don't take what you think, put it in your mouth and see what you think. So Jodi, you better see what you think because I know we're hitting the end here.
Well, here's what I want to talk about with the 17 and the 20 and the 11 and everything else. So moved to Napa Valley, and I to be honest, I only moved here because I was trying to work internationally and in Australia, and Molly's from Australia and she's on the winemaking team. She's wonderful. And I got to talk to her about the Spottswoode clone, which I want to talk about in a second. But Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and everybody said this, well, are you an expert in Napa Valley wines? And I was like, no, hopefully I know a lot about all the regions. Like that's my job as a sommelier. And they're like, yeah, well, why would we hire an American unless you're an expert in Napa? Like I was ridiculous. And it was an epiphany. And I was like, of course, Napa's here. You're like, yeah, I'm an American, Napa Valley, whatever. You go to every other country, you say you're in wine, they go, Napa. And you're like, well, yeah, but I live in Boston, I'm in Charleston, this and that. Yeah, but Napa? And I was finally like, oh my God, all right, enough. Let me go to Napa. Let me hit this restaurant and do this little thing at press for a while so I could say I have that under my belt and I don't ever want to leave. And it might be a problem.
Right.
And, but people would say, oh, well, gosh, not 11 Napa, or, ooh, that was a rainy vintage, or, well, what if 84 wasn't a good year in Napa? No, all the years everywhere are going to be good if you have winemakers and people that know what they're doing.
Exactly.
So when you say a winemaker's vintage, and that's where the scores fail. Like when the 11s came out, everyone was like, what a terrible vintage. Well, for somebody that loves old world wines, 11 is the biggest tool in your toolbox. When someone goes, I'm here in Napa with this group of people, but I only drink Old World. And you're like, cool, let me get you something. And you pour them in 11 Spottswoode and they go, oh my God, this is amazing. Where is this from? And you're like, yeah, it's 3 miles down the road in St. Helena.
Yes.
And it's right there. And they're like, what? And it's like everything else. So everybody goes, well, 17 fires. Don't buy anything from 17 or 20. There's no wine left in the 2020 vintage. And at press, that's not the truth, everybody. It's not the truth. And so when you're sending your labs to Australia and British Columbia, is that because all the labs here were so inundated?
It's just because at this point, they don't yet have the capacity to measure those smoke compounds. I mean, in Australia, they've been dealing with this for longer. And I don't honestly know why BC, British Columbia would have this, but they here, the labs don't offer it yet. Obviously, they're going to do it because there's these fires. I mean, well, of course, we're hoping that we've seen some of the most extremes in terms of fires that we're going to see. But we don't know. I mean, all bets are off right now. But we know that we have to deal with this. That this is ongoing, and that we have to address it. So to me, I think our 17 is absolutely, it's just stunning. It has that core depth, that beauty. It's a little bit more red fruited, maybe a little bit more of that boysenberry and
Yes.
red raspberry, and just fresh. And you talk about it. Go ahead.
Okay. So all right. So 17 it's such a great vintage. And we already know that I don't have a lot of objectivity about Spottswoode. So what I will say is this: during the break for me taking pictures to coming here today, ran into one of my favorite master sommeliers who has sold wine in the Valley for a really long time, and somebody that I actually trust. And when I said that we were coming here today and he asked what we were going to be tasting, I said 2017. And he said the 2017 Cabernet from Spottswoode is the best Cabernet coming out of the Valley. He's like, look, and sold 17 for a winery, and that winery is great too, but literally was like, it's unbelievable. It is my favorite wine from 2017. It is the best cab. And I was like, great. Can I quote you? I'm not gonna even say his name because I don't want to get him in trouble with his job, because the Valley is this big.
Exactly.
The Valley is this big. But he said it and immediately just started spitting love letters about the wine. And that's exactly what it is. But you know what else is here? It is red fruited, but there is this rose oil. There's such a florality here,
Exactly.
mixed with spice.
Yeah.
And then on the palate, it is this everybody always says they want dark chocolate. I want dark chocolate in a wine. And you very rarely get dark chocolate in a wine. Right. This is the dark chocolate cocoa powder. It gives you this
that's a good way of saying it. That's good.
It's like the chocolate without the sweetness.
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely true. And the tannins, are always so powdery. They have that just a beautiful powdery sense. They're never grainy. They're not drippy. It's a really powdery tannin profile, and
they kind of increase, like when you, in a good way. So what it is, you taste, you're like, oh, you get all this gorgeous fruit, and then literally it cleans up after itself on your palate. Then you're left with that cocoa powder, and you're left with those tannins. And I talked to Molly, who was on the way out while I was coming in here.
Yes.
And because somebody said to me, oh, they made wine from the Islay Vineyard. And I was like, incorrect. There's no way. I've never heard about it. No. And then I tasked Molly, and she was like, well, so there are clones, and there's a Spottswoode clone, and there's an Islay clone.
That's right.
And the word on the street is that these are gumshoe, or what do they call those? Suitcase. In the past, it came from somewhere very storied. But she did say that the Spottswoode clone in particular, that's what she talked about. She said it does have to do with the people. People are part of terroir. We can talk about that. People are part of terroir. It's the site. It's the exposition, it's the soil, but it's also your clone. And she said that the Spottswoode clone does something so special with tannins. And it really, for the amount of structure this wine has, it should be ripping your face off. Yes. And it's not. It is the perfect balance of, you can drink it now, it will age, but this beautiful elevated structure where the tannins match acidity, match fruit, match other. And by other, I mean, that's your spice element. There's no overwhelming new oak here, but it is aged 20 months in 60% new French oak barrels. It is so well integrated.
Exactly. We've always been about 60% new oak. That's just been, again, that was something that Tony started, and it's all about having that balance in the wine. We don't want it oak dominant. We want everything to come together and work as a cohesive, holistic wine. And I think that this does that, and just exemplifies, what can happen in a more challenging vintage. And for us, the more challenging, more interesting,
Well, also it just really speaks to okay, I want to try something from Napa, and I'm familiar with these other ones, and I've heard about Spottswoode, but I've never actually tried them, and that is a mistake. This is one of the most beautiful properties. First of all, we didn't even talk about the baby animals, because I didn't even go see them, because I didn't want to be that one that's spouting off what a beautiful day I had with the baby animals. For me, it's about the place, it's about the people. But also when you were talking about your the B Corp certified, you were Demeter certified this year as well, because now
Right.
you're
Yeah, we just got our Demeter certification. Biodynamics. So yeah, we're just doing, we really, anything that makes us think long-term about what we're doing, anything that is good for, when you look at these hotter, more unique vintages, what's happening in the extremes, it's just like your own self. If you take good care of yourself, technically, you're better able to you're more resilient. You're better able to kind of take things that come your way. And that's how our vineyard, I mean, with the organic farming now for what, 35 years, like, or 40, God, 85. Yeah, 35 years. I have to do the math. It's like, hi, math. But, and then the biodynamics, we feel like we've built this resiliency into our system that is allowing us to withstand, or allowing our vineyard to adapt to some of these extremes. And so that's really another compelling reason to do the right thing. I mean, it's the right thing for the environment, but it also is just the right way to farm. We need to take care of our soils. We need to take care of our land. We need to take care of our community. We're, as Jodi can attest to, we're here in the city limits of Santa Helena, which is so interesting. We're surrounded by, we have neighbors, and we're neighbors, and we want to do the right thing. We don't work, so we don't spray anything. We don't burn here. We till our pruning cuttings back into the soil. We really work hard to be the very best stewards we possibly can be.
We have a question from Mark Polly. Wants to know if you actually coordinate like planting and all the phases of wine with the cycles of the moon. Like, do you apply your treatments during the cycles of the moon and fruit days?
Yeah, we do that sort of thing where we can. If it comes down, Mark, to say picking and it's time to pick based upon what Mother Nature is throwing our way. If it's hot or dry or windy, or we know things are happening, we can't obviously do that, but we very much, when we're doing foliar, different biodynamic treatments and different things that we're either putting in the soil, and we brew our own sort of teas here. Yes. They can be pretty stinky and pretty disgusting, to be honest with you, but they're remarkable, and they are alive. They're really interesting. So we do as much as we can, and if you're thinking about pruning, and when we're pruning, I mean, of course, there's no sap flow, even though the wind is there. The moon is there. The sap flows will be higher when the moon is full, and then the sap flows will be a little bit lower when the moon, because there is a real pull to the moon. We really try to make sure that we're on top of that, but we don't like say, okay, we're stopping for 3 days because, or something like that. We do what we're doing, but we are very cognizant of what's happening.
Got it. And like, I want to show this to whoever we're talking about. This is my app on my phone, and this talks about like what day it is. Oh, and somebody's calling me. So we're going to decline that and then go back to this. So this says that today is a leaf day and that it is not a good wine day. And maybe that's true, but these wines are showing beautiful.
I'm not buying that.
Yeah. So, the wines are gorgeous. I like it. Everybody thinks that it's like super like crunchy and hippie, but the bottom line is, if you think pragmatically, like, even if we're not talking about being good stewards of the land or being good neighbors or whatever the case is, if I have somebody, and I said this at a seminar last week, if I have somebody come in the restaurant and they say, we're going to be getting a bottle of wine and my wife is pregnant and she would like a glass of wine. Well, guess what I'm doing? I'm doing everything. I'm thinking about every property that I know and figuring out what they're doing with their soil and what they're doing with their viticulture, because I've been to beautiful storied properties and you look around and you don't hear a bird. You don't hear a bee. It's total silence. Everything is perfectly manicured, and invariably, and this happened to me twice, where I went, can you tell me about your viticultural practices? Even as a baby som. And I've had people say, we use Roundup. And I went, wow, okay, wow, thanks for telling me that. I'm not going to put you on blast, but I'm also not selling that wine to people for $500 a bottle. I'm not doing
it. Exactly.
I'll buy it if somebody's interested, but I'm not giving it to you. You're pregnant, and I'm going to forget it.
It's shocking. You walk around our vineyard like you did today. There's so much bird life. We have bluebirds and we have swallows and we have, and you're just hearing it. It's a really rich environment for insects and for birds. It induces peace and brings you a sense of place and kind of calm. It's
like rose bushes. Rose bushes, they don't get attacked by aphids if they're healthy. So
Right.
what you're trying to do is you're literally, if people don't know what biodynamics are, it's like taking organic and cubing it, organic
Right.
cube. What you're
Right.
doing is you're saying that this vineyard is its own universe, and you're trying to use the things in it and around it, and everything that goes around it or in it is going to be helpful. It's going to create health in the soil. It's going to create like healthy microbes, and it's going to, and the vine feels it and it heals
Exactly.
itself, and it
Absolutely.
fights disease and it fights insects because it's healthy. It's just like
Exactly.
people.
Yep.
So
Exactly
honestly,
right.
at the end of the day. So let's talk about this last thing, because I know we've gone a little bit over. So this is what we've had today. We've had the 2019 Sauvignon Blanc, which we talked about a lot, and good. I'm glad, because there's a lot of Sauvignon Blanc in Napa Valley, and it's the best one. Sorry, everybody. Everybody can be mad at me. I don't work at a restaurant right now. Nobody can yell at me. They'll have to text me. This is the 2017 Lyndenhurst, allegedly a second label, but not really, because it's actually
Or Napa Valley Cabernet,
it's
not
a Napa Valley Cabernet, but it's also a Bordeaux blend. It has all the
Right.
pure grapes in it, and it is, the aromatics on these two are so crazy different in a good
Yes.
way. Like this has been, I hope that I don't know. I don't get the figures on how many people have bought the wine and have them in front of them. But I will tell you this. I hope that if you do not, that you will pick these three wines up, and then watch this again, because I feel like it's like hearing about delicious food and not having any. It's a shame is what it is. And then the last one is Spottswoode 2017. This is the family estate grown Cabernet from the Spottswoode estate, which is the most gorgeous place. I also want to speak to when you said you wanted to be good neighbors in closing. Worked at press, and so many times you would come in and you would bring wine that you had opened here to have the Somm team taste, whether it was an older vintage or something that was, just bottled. You would let us taste those, and how wonderful that always was. And then this seems small, and I promise you it's not. When the whole thing happened with the pandemic, restaurants, it was a free fall of terror and horror to be in restaurants. This will be 30 years for me in May, and this is the first time I haven't been in a restaurant. 30 years in restaurants this May for me, and never seen anything like it. And you sent a little package to the Somms, to me, Taylor, and Carrie, and it had organic coffee and this really beautiful, like handcrafted coffee cup. It didn't have a
pottery coffee cup without a handle. Yeah, that was Mary Pat Sullivan's idea. It was a great idea. She went out and found this local woman who makes these, and that was something wonderful to do, to just send something to everybody, because it was such a horribly tough time.
I drink in that coffee mug every single morning.
Yes.
I just moved, and it sits on the front seat next to me, and it says Spottswoode on the bottom. And I was like, you know what? They could have just sent wine. They could have been like, hey, we miss you guys. Good luck when you open. Because so many people were trying, like it hurt wine too. Like no one's buying wine if a restaurant's not open.
Right.
And so no one knew what to do. Distributors were in a free fall. Wineries were like, we cycle through Spottswoode. Like I'll pick it up, and people don't realize, you come to press and you see somebody like, hey, I need 3 cases of this. You're allowed to buy winery direct. And what that does is it literally, your relationships with wineries, it's not just like, it's daily. I see you at Sunshine. I see Wagner here. Oh, look, it's that winemaker's kid that I like constantly. It's literally a community. And like that small thing, like I loved it so much. And it was just so like, we needed coffee. Everybody needed a rubbed face to be told how pretty they were. Like it was been awful for everybody. And I'm really glad we're coming out of it. And I'm so glad we're doing this. And I'm glad to be here today, even though you're down the hall, we're in separate rooms.
Exactly what we have to be, but that'll come to an end too.
Right. This is why it's been so beautiful here today. Your wines are gorgeous. You know how I feel about them. I've always been such a fan, even before I got here. And this is, I guess, my 4th or 5th visit in 2 years. And like, it's better every time. Aaron is the most humble, intelligent, talented, unassuming person I have ever met. And when you said that he turned off his phone and he wanted to listen to the wines, that's how I would describe him. Because he was like, I don't want to hear it. And what a decision. Like, you're responsible for what, an entire vintage? What if the wine's terrible? What if
Right.
it all tastes raisinated? What if everything goes through the optical sorter and there are 4 grapes left? And he went, I don't want to hear it. We're going to just trust it. And look, it worked out. You've got master sommeliers being like, this is the best wine of the vintage.
Right on. I'm glad to hear
2017
it.
Spottswoode murdered it. Chris Blanchard. Okay, so
Thank you, Jodi.
listen, I'm not in a restaurant anymore. I don't have to like, anyway, this has been wonderful. Beth, thank you so much. We've been here with Beth Novak Milliken. She is it here at Spottswoode. She is one of my favorite people in Napa Valley.
Thank you.
And then the Sauvignon Blancs talked about by Karen McNeil, another one of my favorite people in the Valley. Molly's one of my favorite people in the Valley. So is Aaron. Like, it's literally coming here is like coming home. They set up a space for us today. They have lunch for their staff every day. Everybody eats together outside. Like, these are the things you don't hear about, but that are super important that we hear about. And like, do you want to support a winery that does good things? Sure. But not if they don't have great wine. But what if they have everything? What if everything is in perfect harmony? It's a beautiful place. It's got a beautiful history. I literally wore this today. This was my mother's. And I wore Shalimar because I know that in the great beyond, Mary and my mom are hanging out talking about us right now. And so I wanted to bring all that good energy. And her birthday's Aries also. I wanted to bring that good energy here today. And I just love this place and I love these wines. Somebody just said, I just bought all the wines seriously on Benchmark. There's like 5 of those. I'm not kidding. I'm not a good liar. And I don't do any of these Benchmark videos unless I am down with the wine. I just don't. I'm a terrible liar. Everybody can tell. You don't want to be sold something. These are wines I buy. These are wines I drink. These are wines I give as presents. I'm a big fan. Is there anything, anybody, if you want to say anything, Beth, in closing? I know we went over.
No, I think I love your enthusiasm, and I really appreciate this opportunity to share our wines with you. Thank you very, very much, and thank you, Benchmark, for having Spottswoode among those wines that you share with your customers. We truly appreciate your support and everything that you do for us and your enthusiasm. So thank you very much.
Perfect. And the last thing I have is a quote, and I wrote this quote down 7 months ago. When everything was like dark and terrible. And I want to read it because it reminds me of Spottswoode. And this is why I'm going to read it. Okay. It says, Napa Valley needs not the services of the poet. It sings its own praises and speaks for itself. Here, nature has been so lavish in her gifts that man can add nothing to heighten the charms nor enhance the worth of this veritable Eden. That reminds me of Spottswoode. And this is from the St. Helena Star in 1888.
Wow. What a wonderful quote that is.
I know. Well, thank you so much. Please come visit Spottswoode and come look at the sunset and don't tell anybody else and drink the wines. Thank you for joining Benchmark Wine today. Please buy the wines through them or come here and do it. Doesn't matter. This is all about education and it's about highlighting beautiful wines, beautiful people in this most beautiful place in this veritable Eden. So we are glad to have you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.